When you study music theory in school, you learn from a professor, from a book, in a specific order, which means you don't miss any steps. It's more challenging to learn music theory on your own, and a lot of guitar players fall into the trap of jumping from topic to topic and making things harder than they need to be. But music theory really isn't that difficult if you take it step by step. With that in mind, I'm going to share a roadmap with you for learning music theory. Not everybody will 100% agree with this timeline, and there are certainly arguments for changing the order of things, especially as we get further down the list. But if you're learning music theory on your own, keep this roadmap on hand so you don't get ahead of yourself. And you can download this roadmap for free. Click the downloads link in the description. You'll be able to play a lot of this stuff before you study it from a theory standpoint, and that's just fine. The goal is to be able to put your theory studies to practical use. Sometimes this means you learn to play something first and then learn the labels and the why of things later. And sometimes you run across a concept in theory first and then experiment to see how it can add to your playing. And now on to the roadmap. First thing, and a lot of guitar players may not like this, is to learn to read standard music notation. You can learn theory without music reading, just using the fretboard, but it's a lot easier if you can read. And as a bonus, being able to read standard music notation will open doors for you as a player. As you learn to read standard notation, you should also learn the notes on the fretboard. Reading the notes on the staff is one thing. If you want to actually apply theory concepts on the guitar, you're going to need to be able to find those notes on the neck. Next on the list is half steps and whole steps. Scales are the building blocks of music, and most scales are built on a series of half steps and whole steps. If you understand half steps and whole steps and how to play them on the guitar, you'll understand scale construction more easily, and it'll be easier to learn your scales from both a theory standpoint and as a player. After half steps and whole steps, learn your major scales. Most non-classical guitarists learn pentatonic scales first because they're easier on the guitar. If you're studying music theory, you should learn how major scales are built because the major scale serves as a point of reference for everything else. Next up is key signatures. At the most basic level, a key signature tells you which notes to play as flat or sharp. Beyond that, you can use some simple key signature rules for learning what key you're playing in. First major keys and then their relative minor keys, which come later in this list. As you're learning key signatures, it's helpful to learn the circle of fifths. It's not absolutely necessary to learn the circle of fifths, but it's a very useful tool for understanding how key signatures relate to each other. Now is also a good time to start learning about intervals and their inversions. An interval is the distance and pitch between two notes. Understanding intervals is your key to understanding how chords are built. Once you understand intervals, you're ready to learn how to build triads. The two most common triads are major and minor triads, so start with those. Then learn diminished triads and save augmented triads for last. And when studying triads, you should learn to label the parts of the chord, the root, third, and the fifth. After learning to build and recognize triads, you should learn about chord inversions. At first, you'll learn chords in root position, meaning that the root of the chord, or the note the chord is built on, is written and played as the lowest sounding note. In chord inversions, some note other than the root of the chord is written as the lowest sounding note. After you're comfortable with triads, it's time to learn some common major key chord progressions. Now, you can put chords in any order you like, but at first it's useful to learn the most common progressions. If you do this, you'll begin to see a lot of the same chord progressions in different songs, and that is going to make songs easier to learn and memorize. Next up, seventh chords. There are several types of seventh chords, but the most common is the dominant 7. After that, check out the major 7, minor 7 flat 5, and diminished 7 chords. And by the way, in classical theory, minor 7 flat 5 chords are better known as half diminished chords, and diminished 7 chords are better known as fully diminished chords. As you learn seventh chords, you'll want to start adding them to the major key progressions mentioned earlier. You'll find that major 7 and minor 7 serve the same function as major and minor triads. They're just more colorful. And now is a good time to learn about relative major and minor. And you can certainly learn about relative major and minor earlier in this timeline, possibly right after major scales and key signatures if you like. This important concept will help you understand the relationship between major and minor keys. As you get familiar with relative major and minor, you should learn to construct and play natural, harmonic, and melodic minor scales. You can definitely learn these scales before learning about the concept of relative major and minor, but they'll make more sense if you learn about relative minor first. I suggest learning the natural minor scale first, then the harmonic minor, and then melodic minor. After you have learned minor scales and keys, you can start exploring common minor chord progressions the way you learned common major chord progressions earlier in the timeline. Once you're comfortable with seventh chords, you could learn about color chords, extensions, and altered dominants. Color chords are chords like major 6 or minor 6, suspensions, or add chords. Extensions are chords such as 9th, 11th, and 13th chords. And in altered dominant chords, you will often see a dominant 7 with a raised or lowered 5th or 9th. And then you could check out secondary dominants. The dominant chord is based on the 5th scale degree and leads strongly to the tonic or the 1 chord. A secondary dominant is a chord that has been altered to sound like a dominant 7 chord, and it leads strongly to a note other than the tonic. And modes. A lot of guitar players fall into the trap of trying to learn modes too soon, like it's a magic pill for better soloing. You can absolutely learn modes earlier in your theory journey, but you'll gain a deeper understanding of modes and how to use them if you have more knowledge under your belt. And there are plenty of other theory topics you can get into after all of this. Modulations, chord substitutions, and a whole lot more. And if you've gone through this checklist in order, or at least close to this order, you'll be ready to tackle these deeper subjects. If you'd like a free copy of this roadmap, go ahead and click the free downloads link in the description, and then scroll down until you find the Music Theory Roadmap PDF. And check out this playlist if you're interested in music theory for guitar players. And for more guitar lessons, music theory, and solo guitar arrangements, please subscribe.